Good afternoon. This is Critical Talk with Professor Al-Deen. And Critical Talk is a production of Muslim Network TV, to which I hope all of you are listening. Today, in these waning days before what is becoming a traumatic election, I decided to talk about something that is there but is rarely talked about, and that's the process of academia. Students, as undergraduate students, often are just struggling through their courses, and then at some point, realize, oh, I want to be this, that, or the other. And oh my goodness, I have to go to graduate school for that. And how is that going to work? Well, one of the interesting turnarounds is women in academia, and especially Muslim women, as the processes at the various stages are largely hidden. So today I have the honor of speaking with a great colleague of mine, Shabana Mir, who is an associate professor of anthropology and the director of the undergraduate studies at the American Islamic College. She is the author of the award winning and really good reading book, Muslim American Women on Campus. For those of you who have not read this text, I suggest you pick it up. I've taught the text a couple of times. My students enjoyed it. They found themselves in the text, and they had stuff that, oh, she can add this, that, and yeah. I said, well, she will when she does another edition. Um, she works a lot in the community in a myriad ways, but she's been involved in curriculum design, residence hall stuff, faculty development, and all of the wonderful things that few of us know a lot about. So I would like to welcome Dr. Shabana Mir to Critical Talk this afternoon.
Thank you, Professor Amina. This is just an excuse for me to hang out with you.
That's a great. Well, I love excuses, and I love hangouts. You know,
Mm.
um, one of the things I want to start with, as undergraduates, people, young people have all of these ideas about what they think they want to be. Sometimes those ideas match their actual abilities, sometimes they don't. And counselors and others, professors by grades, have to kind of steer them in other directions. But I don't think they really understand the process, um, especially as undergraduates, that it is important that you get the best grade possible, that teachers remember your creativity, your exuberance for learning whatever their subject matter is, etc. Because these are the people who are going to write letters of recommendation. So, although I thought I would start at a different point, maybe I'll start there. Um, since you direct undergraduate studies and trying to shepherd folk along the way, would you say something about that part of your task?
Yeah, so that's really important. And most students don't know about it because it's kind of kept as, like the black boxes, and we don't unpack it for people,
Yeah.
right? And as somebody who, I'm an immigrant, right? So I didn't know almost anything about the whole process of applying to an American graduate school, what it takes, what do you need for it, the kinds of things you should know in advance, right? And so people who came with that understanding were hugely advantaged in comparison to me. And I took a long time catching up with that knowledge. So thank you for doing this, in that it helps people who don't already have that knowledge to catch up with this kind of stuff that we're supposed to have, and people assume you have because it's the hidden curriculum, right?
Right.
So basically, we're like, a lot of the time we're keeping out people who don't already know. how to
That's
navigate the
very true. I mean, all the time. And, one of the things, it's ironic that you say, one expects immigrants to not come with all of this knowledge. But students coming out of American high schools
100%.
also don't have the knowledge. They're
Yeah.
used to a lot of hand holding and, um, well, help me do this. And oh, my cat died. And can I turn this in late? And oh my goodness, I forgot. And all of those things are supposed to
Yeah.
get them over or through.
Mm.
They get to college and it's a shock. Oh,
It is.
it's oh my God.
Mm.
And if you are unfortunate enough to have not paid attention to orientation, you don't know which courses to get out of the way first, what perhaps remedial courses, and even though that's in another show, because they're beginning to get rid of remedial courses because they figure if you need that much remediation, perhaps college is not for you. But the
Uh-huh.
American ethos says every child, every child, irrespective of ability, is supposed to go to college, which is absurd.
Mm. Mm. So this is the struggle, right? And as I have a child who just started high school, and it takes an enormous amount of expertise on the part of parents to help
Yeah,
shepherd
yeah,
into high school, let alone college.
yeah, yeah,
So I just can't even imagine what happens with kids whose parents haven't attended high school or haven't attended college or
right,
grad school. Both of my daughter's parents have done grad school,
yeah,
and so we are still often stumped in the process. We are
yeah.
still often stumped with the process. So imagine a child who doesn't have parents who can navigate the system with them. It just blows my.
And that's the majority of the kids.
Yeah,
Believe it or not, it is the majority of the kids. But as
absolutely.
we hit graduate school,
Yeah.
and I was thinking about, because I've had two different kinds of graduate school, one in the natural sciences and one in humanities.
I did
One
not know that.
my first graduate school was in pathology, but
Oh my
the
heavens. Okay.
process is very different even
Mm,
from college. In the
mhm,
natural sciences, you're just kind of thrown in there with set programs, as you are with the natural sciences and undergraduate school.
mm,
Um, and you either float or you sink.
yeah.
In the humanities, it is more helter skelter. It's all over um, the place. And some people may find that graduate school isn't for them
Mm,
because the object of graduate school is not to get you through it.
mm,
And while that may be difficult
mm,
to understand, well, why wouldn't they want to get me through? They make money. Well, they make money and there are many more of you behind you, but the
mm.
object is not to get it through. But I want to focus on women
Yeah.
and the particular trials of women, especially as academe has looked up and says, oh, it's too many women. Let us go back to being the
Mm.
male centered place that we've always been with our rituals, et cetera, et cetera. And
Make America male again, right?
there you
Or
go.
make academia
And
male
then
again.
there comes Muslim women.
Yes.
So why don't we share our experiences
Yeah.
in the process, just getting to a dissertation?
Right. Do you want me to go?
Yeah, go.
Okay. So this is a really interesting question when you choose even a topic of dissertation, right? And I didn't think about how the topic of dissertation is closely related to the job market, right? So
Yeah,
what you pick for your topic of dissertation is really closely. It's not just, oh, I'm going to have a PhD and that's going to be fine.
yeah,
No, you probably want to look at the job market, look at what the job market is looking for,
right.
and tailor your interests accordingly. It doesn't feel right because it might not be what you absolutely love, but maybe you can
Exactly.
tailor what you absolutely love in order to put in those keywords so that you're searchable when that job market vacancy turns up. Because let's face it, you got to eat.
Exactly. But and it's also I've looked at the narrowness of study. For some reasons, students think they will be successful if in their master's degree work and their PhD work, they focus on what they like. And it's not really, excuse me,
Mm.
about what you like.
Yeah.
It is about a little bit of what you like and what will get you into an academic department,
Mhm.
what you can actually do and extensive research on, because you
Mhm.
also have to begin to develop very early
Mhm.
a research long term set of projects.
Right.
And I don't think that any of our professors um, even paid attention to that. You know,
No.
I was getting through a course, getting ready for your comprehensives, um, but not, no, I don't want to talk about this little sliver of stuff over here.
Mhm.
The sliver is a part of something else. So how are you going to situate your sliver? I'm excited and always have been about
Mhm.
your field of anthropology, because I found that in Islamic studies, which has very little, if any, method as we know it, I
Yes.
have to go back and take graduate courses in philosophy and anthropology to have a place to sit.
You are so right about that. I'm so glad you said that
Yeah,
because it's so true. Religious studies is a very strange animal, and Islamic studies is an even stranger animal,
yes,
right? And
yeah,
it's not absolutely situated. It doesn't have that, a language, a disciplined language,
right,
right?
right,
So that makes it a very strange animal, and
yeah,
especially given where fields are being cut in the humanities, departments are being cut, jobs are being cut. You want to situate yourself in a couple of different slots so that you'll be eligible
yeah,
for jobs, right? And you're so right about how the many things that our advisors don't teach us to do. And I
right.
found a lot of the time, even though I had very good advisors,
Mhm.
that they were mostly focused on getting us out, getting us done.
If you were going to be done. And if
Yes.
you were not, I mean, in the program in Islamic studies I was in,
Yeah.
if your comps weren't up to snuff, they ended you. And I mean, they ended
I
you
believe it.
on the spot.
Yeah.
I mean, it was horrible. Let us take a quick break now for a couple of minutes to refresh ourselves. I seem to have inhaled something that's horrible. Um,
Um,
and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the process. This is Professor Al-Deen and Critical Talk with the lovely Dr. Shabana Mir. And we'll be right back. This is Critical Talk with Professor Al-Deen, and I have the wonderful opportunity to talk with Dr. Shabana Mir about especially Muslim women in academia and more broadly women in academia. Um, One of the things I found horrible, uh, and I learned it later in life, was in Islamic studies in particular, there are two tracks. There are those programs which came out of the US's military kind of campaigns, that American University, this place, that, and the other, which focused on language studies and a little bit of Islamic studies. And then there were two programs like the one I went to who were not attached to the US government, but who focused purely on Islamic studies. But nevertheless, when you got to your comprehensives, which are your expertise in 4 or 5 areas,
Mhm.
people were stopped cold. And they didn't know that they were going to be stopped cold. They knew they had to pass the exam, but they had no idea about the grading. Our exams were both written and oral. You had to defend what you had written. So you got kind of two grades. But I remember the shock on my face with a man who let out this scream in the hall because his program had ended at the master's degree.
Goodness.
I don't know how it goes in anthropology or anywhere else, but I was, in pathology and the hard sciences, you
Yeah.
test and you move along.
Yeah. So typically, around the time that I've been doing this kind of work, the understanding is that by the time you get to your comps, you should have prepared. It's your job to have your students prepared for them.
Yeah,
And
but
that
all the
shouldn't
professors
be it.
don't prepare their students.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
And that's a failure on the part of the professor.
Yeah,
Like, if it's that big a surprise, then the professor has probably not communicated well enough. And that would be a concern for me. If it's like a huge surprise to you, what you're dealing with, then there's a failure of communication right there.
yeah. What? But the other side of that
Yeah.
is the politics.
Yes.
If you're female,
Yeah.
if you're a woman of color,
Yeah.
and if you're Muslim on top of that,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of the politics can be playing a role in
Yes.
how much information you
Yes.
actually get.
Yes, there are networks which you don't become part of.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, what they call, it sounds like a very nice thing, implicit racism. It sounds like so polite, like implicit racism. We're just gonna, it's like a cup of tea that you don't get or something,
Right.
right?
Right.
But it's really very toxic. It's very deep, and it becomes something that, for example, you don't get invited to those hangouts where you learn these things. You don't get invited to the meetings, to the, I don't know, playing a sport or something together, or drinking beer together
Right.
or something, where beer is actually really central to this to
Yeah.
this whole discussion. But you don't get then invited to these discussions where you learn so much more about the field than what you learn in the classroom, right? And then you don't get invited for those, I don't know, chapter collaborations or book volume collaborations and things like that. So that
Right.
happens.
Which
And
you
it's,
got to start early
you
in
got to start.
order to be
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, frankly, as some people think I'm quite successful, but I did not have any idea of these things. And
Me
I'm surprised
neither.
how long I didn't have any idea about these things, despite having quite good relationships with my faculty. So, and yet, despite that, I would just hear news about other colleagues that were spurting ahead in the field, doing all the things that they needed to do. And it was almost like, oh, don't bother this poor girl, right?
Hmm.
She's just getting through life. If
Yeah.
she gets her PhD, will be, she'll be lucky.
Right.
And we're
Right.
not going to push her in this regard. It's funny, actually. I remember one time, and this was actually, I feel like it was actually kind of central to the way my field developed is that I was talking to an academic, and she was saying that it would be a good thing if I did a double major in anthropology,
Mm-hmm.
and it really would have changed a lot, not only about my profile, but about my book, about my entire field, about my
Right.
job possibilities
Right.
right now. Because
Yeah.
then I would have a PhD in cultural anthropology. And I
Right.
approached the person concerned, and they just kind of rolled their eyes because they just wanted me out.
Yeah.
They just wanted me done. And they said, okay, Shabana. And really, I was raised to be a polite person and to be submissive and compliant. And I said, oh, that's a signal not to do this thing, right? But sometimes you really have to push.
Yes.
And that was really a crucial decision that I said, okay, fine, I won't do it.
Yeah.
And I really do feel that it would have helped a good deal at this time in this job market for me to have that. So sometimes you really have to push. And that's before your dissertation. It's just during your academic coursework. And so sometimes you have to design your coursework in such a way as to make sure that your possibilities in the job market are good.
Yeah, but I'm hearing an echo. I don't know where it's coming from. Can we take a quick break and let us get the audio portion
Yeah.
sorted out? This is Professor Al-Deen with Critical Talk. We're talking about Muslim women in academia and more generally women in academia. This is Professor Green, and I still hear that echo.
Mm.
And I'm back with Dr. Shabana Mir. We're talking about women in academia, Muslim women in particular, and women in general. I don't know what it's doing.
Should I use my Bluetooth?
I don't know.
Oh, let me use my Bluetooth then.
Hello, can you hear me without that echo? Let's go. Okay, I am back, and hopefully our audio issues are clarified. But I wanted to go back to something you said, and
Yeah.
that was, many women, just because I don't know, it's not something women are brought up to do, or if they do that, they're thought to be aggressive, and then that gets a backlash. It's pushing for something, or even pushing to ask questions when you don't really know how to formulate the question. That I think is one of the most difficult things to do. If you don't know where your particular, because all dissertations are supposed to be unique research, right?
Right.
And if you're not sure, because the nature of research and the subjects opening up are different month
Yeah.
by month, you're not sure where all of the things that it can inform what you're doing are seen.
Yeah.
If you don't have a darn good professor who's in
Yeah.
the fight with you,
Yeah.
you're lost. You don't
Yes.
know what questions to ask. The best you'll get is, this doesn't feel
Yeah.
quite right to me,
Right.
and then that's the end of the conversation, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right in that, and that's actually a really good point. In that, before you take on a professor, I think a
Mhm.
lot of people are very. I always see these very sort of excited posts about I got into this PhD program, and like people are very like excited about this. They should know that the program is lucky to have you, first of
Exactly,
all, and
exactly.
you should know that you are an asset to the department and
Uh-huh.
that you should have the best advisor ever. So you should maybe research that advisor instead of only being grateful to be led into this
Mhm.
program, but also do research into this department and make sure that the advisor you have is clear and that the advisor you have really does uplift their previous students. So that might be something you want to look at. Like, what has happened to their previous students? Do they get jobs? What do they say about the advisor? That's something to look at. And you definitely want to look into that because
Um,
sometimes somebody might be a very good scholar, but that doesn't mean they're always very good at uplifting their graduate students.
that is very true,
Yeah,
because we have
yeah,
scholars who are researchers,
yeah,
and they're not
yeah,
um,
yeah.
good in terms of advising
Yes, yes,
students about what they
yeah.
need to do, and their research may
Right.
be so narrow that
That's the other thing.
they
Yeah,
can't or don't want to spend the time
yeah.
expanding their minds. I'm going to ask you to lower your screen just a little bit,
Oh,
because I seem to
so
have reached
oh,
the
great.
um,
Let's see.
the the
Right.
the, the depths my screen is able to
is,
go to.
is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. All
Um,
right.
I
No, you're what you're saying is so right and so important, but not one of those things that most students know about when they get into a grad program.
right.
So the other thing is like perhaps your advisor might be very good at uplifting certain populations of students, but
Right.
not others. So
Right.
some professors simply are not very good at dealing with students of color,
Yes.
right? So,
Even
for
if they're the
example,
same color, it
yes,
would be a male
yes,
female thing.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or that, for example, they have a problem. And this is something I actually encountered as
Mhm.
a faculty member that some faculty members that I worked with actually had a problem with any people who identified with a religion.
Yes.
Like they were actually
Oh,
prejudiced against them. We would get applications and this person would always say, how can they be neutral, how can they be objective when they're so religious? And I was like, whoa, Are you seriously?
Exactly.
Are you
What are you
serious
talking
about
about?
this?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, this can be a problem, and they, because we work under this code of protecting each other, these things
Right.
don't become public, right?
Yeah.
So we don't go to our students and say you've been discriminated against in our faculty member meeting.
And you
So,
can't. You
yep,
actually can't. You can throw
yeah,
hints out
yeah,
about you're not
yeah,
getting what you need to go forward.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you have a choice.
yeah,
You can either
yeah,
stop and turn and get the student what they need to
yeah,
go forward, or
yeah,
you can let it slide. And many
yeah,
times, it slides.
yeah,
And for women in particular,
yeah,
um, it just becomes a quagmire.
yeah.
Especially for those who
Mm.
have families, for
Right.
those who have children or grandchildren
Children.
to
Yes.
raise, because one of the things when you look around, the female scholars that are exceptionally successful are single,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And you sit and
Yes.
you say, well, how come? Well,
Yep.
given all that you have to do, uh,
Yeah.
to get to this, excuse me,
Yep.
dissertation, and it is not
Yep.
something one can do quickly.
Yeah. 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 So the market and your advisor and your faculty members will possibly discriminate against you for
Mhm.
being married or having children or being
Exactly.
pregnant.
Yeah.
For or being
Don't be
pregnant.
free. Don't
Like
be
I
free.
remember, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember, for example, I had one child when I
Mhm.
went into the job market,
Mhm.
and frankly I delayed that for longer than I should have,
Right.
precisely because of the
Right.
PhD, right?
Uh-huh.
And I remember that my very, like, some of our very enlightened and feminist
How
faculty
about that?
members
Mm-hmm.
discriminated against some people and said, why
Exactly.
are you having children? Why are you having children? You need to do this, you need to do this first, you need to not be having children. And it was, I internalized that message, so I took a long time. My first child I had at the age of 37, right? And
Wow.
so then I got into the job market, and then we had this struggle over, are we going to be a long distance couple? Are we going to be parenting long
Yeah.
distance?
Yeah.
It's a very difficult thing, right? So because when you first start out for in the job market, you don't get to choose where you are.
Right.
You don't get to
Well,
choose.
you
You're
do get
living.
to choose if
Yeah.
you, because some of us got
Right.
new job offers, so we could
Yeah.
choose one or the other. For
Yes.
others, but depending upon how they
Mhm.
design what you were talking about
Mhm.
earlier, how
Designing your
they
profile.
feel and their
Yeah.
profile,
Yeah.
they found themselves up the creek without a paddle or
Yes.
a boat because
Yep.
it became settling. And
Yes.
then it's, well, do I really want to be in this place? And for my kids, if I have kids, to be
Right.
raised here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the profile, the original, sort of starting with the beginning of your PhD, even starting with where are you choosing to do your PhD, that's also
Right.
a key factor, right? So,
Exactly.
for example,
Exactly.
you might choose to say, hey, I want to do something on Muslim Americans or whatever,
Right.
and I'm going to go with a scholar who does American religion generally.
Right.
Right. So you could do that, but then you're not working with a specialist who can really give you a lot of support in terms of focusing on American Muslim populations.
But on top of
And
that, is that you're
yeah,
not going to find a job where you can get on a
yeah,
faculty that only
yeah,
does Muslim Americans. You got to
exactly.
know a whole bunch more about all
Yes,
of the other stuff that
you
is
do.
happening on the American landscape.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because if you're in a religious studies program, you're going to have to be a generalist.
Yes.
You're going to have to be a generalist. You're going to have to know a lot more. If you're an anthropologist, you're going to be teaching your Anthro 101s. You're
Right.
not only going to be teaching your Muslims in America courses, you're going to be
Right.
doing a lot wider than that. And really, that's not something that I remember hearing about
No,
in
no.
my
Look, me
doctoral
in
preparation.
another place and
Yeah.
another time, I
Yeah.
didn't hear about it either. And I think one of the things that was also confusing back in the day, and it's changed a little bit now, because
Mm.
now to get a job at medium ranked college, you must have publications,
Yes.
whether they're chapters in books, single article public, and they must be in ranked journals, not just
Yeah.
any journal,
Yeah.
but in ranked journals,
Yeah.
chapters and books done by known authors
Yes.
for known press, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's all of this other stuff that is
Mm.
hidden for you to
Mm.
get a tenure track job. So a lot of people wind up becoming instructors
Yeah.
or adjunct faculty. So talk
Yeah.
a little bit about the difference between an adjunct faculty person and an instructor.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is really, um, this really breaks my heart because I see, it's been at least a few decades that we've been seeing large numbers of highly qualified, published, and extremely intelligent, brilliant scholars that cannot find tenure track jobs or even full time jobs.
Right.
So this is another thing that you want to take into account. Um, one of the things that I saw in a PhD program when I was part of faculty in a PhD program is that I saw people who would take on doctoral students
Uh-huh.
knowing that they would not be able to complete the program and knowing that the job market was not looking promising for those applicants,
Yeah.
but they said we need them for our PhD programs. So
Right.
this is a calculation that many PhD programs are
Well, it's
doing.
because they're getting federal funds.
Right.
And they
Right.
have to have a certain number of
Yeah.
diverse
Of
students. They have to have a certain number of
yeah.
women. So they
Yeah.
will let people in
Yeah.
that they know
Yeah.
are not going to finish. But other
Yeah.
schools will
Yeah.
let folk in and not give them the tools that they need to be
Mm-hmm.
competitive in the market.
Yeah.
Because, like you
Yeah.
said before, it's not just
Yeah.
getting the PhD. What have
Yeah.
you written? What have
Right.
you published? Where is it
Yeah.
written? What is it published? And if
Yeah.
I get this tenure track job, then what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And the other thing is teaching experience. So, for
Yeah.
example, our friends who do their PhDs, for example, in Europe, in Britain, for example, often find that they are hamstrung because they don't get the teaching experience. Because you
Right,
do, you just write your thesis and you publish it, and then you're wondering what to do with only a PhD and no teaching experience. So you
right,
should really try to do that, and I know it's really hard when you're doing a PhD and you're trying to write a dissertation and
right,
plan a whole career ahead of you while at the same time teaching, full classes of undergrads. It's
right,
really
right.
hard. It's
Well, the
really
thing about it is,
hard.
that's where those
Yeah.
professors come in.
Yeah.
I've always
Yes.
tried to write with my students,
Yeah.
encourage my students to work,
Oh,
learn how to edit a book, submit an
mm.
article. I will be a co-author on it with you to
Yeah.
begin their realm, the
Yeah.
process of getting
Yeah.
something published. Because tenuring, which doesn't necessarily mean a lifelong contract, because I've been with some
Mm-mm.
professors
Yeah.
who lost their tenure. Um,
Yeah.
but it is a 6 to 11 year process, depending upon which university you are. And you have
Mm.
teaching with good student and peer evaluations.
That's the
You
other thing.
have publishing,
Mm.
and in many schools nowadays, you have community service.
Yes.
So you have all of these things to do, and what
Yeah.
seems like a long time, but if you
Yeah.
teach in 5, 6, 7 courses a year, it
Yeah.
goes by in a
It
flash.
does. It does. It does. I really, I remember some of the people who got into the PhDs with fellowships
Right,
for which they didn't have to do much work, but they got the
Right.
support. And that's, of course, the ideal, and most people won't get that kind of support.
Well, they
But if you
started
do get
doing
it,
research.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, if you can get that kind of support, the kind of support with an advisor, that you're working with an
Right.
advisor
Right.
and publishing,
Right.
that's the best deal,
Right.
because you're also preparing for the job market while at the same time paying for your PhD. And really, I really think that you shouldn't have to pay for your PhD. You should be doing, you are an asset to the department, and you should be supported by your department. So you should try to get those kinds of gigs, and if not, and definitely try to get some teaching experience and conference presentations. Conference presentations are
They're very good. And a social,
so
uh,
crucial.
right,
Yeah,
disciplinary associations. We have a
that
question.
network building.
We
Yeah.
have a question coming in
Oh,
that says,
yes.
or well, we have several comments, but this is a question.
Hmm.
What are some
I like
common
this.
mistakes you see students make when
Hmm.
choosing or applying for a graduate program?
Hmm. I mean, we've touched on some of those questions. One is choosing a grad program that doesn't have a good match with your area, for
Right.
example, or sometimes choosing, like sometimes people will say, hey, if it's like an Ivy League or something like that, then it's an automatic, it's a good thing. I don't want to be cynical about it, but I also want to, and I want to be realistic about it at the same
Mhm.
time. And I do think that in the job market, they can be pretty superficial about these things. So it's not untrue that people will look at brand names like that. That doesn't necessarily mean that that grad program is really good. So
Well, it
as
is, but you have the internet now. You can,
yeah,
there's always a ranking of
yes,
graduate programs. So
yeah,
you could look and see which
yeah,
schools, and I think you would be pleasantly surprised, have
yeah.
really high rankings that you would have
Mhm.
never thought of. But
In
you also,
those fields,
mhm.
right?
But
Yeah.
you also need to look at, I think, how many scholarships you can get, how many fellowships
Yes.
you can get,
Yeah.
because you don't want to be in a position where
No.
study competes with work.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
yeah, if you've got to work, you
Yeah.
really need to see what you can do so that
Mm.
you work less, study more, finish
Yeah.
faster. And you also
Yes.
need to look at the length of the program.
Yes. That's the
If
other
you
thing.
apply for a program, you look at 5 schools. One
Mm.
program says, and it's ranked really high, that you can
Mm.
get through this program in 2 years. You look at another
Mm.
program, uh, and it says, well, it takes in this school 5 years. Something,
Mm.
something is
Yeah.
wrong that you don't want to
Yeah.
investigate. But also,
Right.
I think what you majored in an undergraduate school
Mm.
may not be what you go to graduate school in.
Yes. So that continuity becomes an issue sometimes.
It does.
Uh, yeah. And that's fine if you do need to do that. A
Right.
lot of people need to do that, especially these days. I mean, people
Exactly.
are moving in and out of fields all the time. The
Exactly.
specializations are growing and changing. People change as well. I mean, look at you. You were what, pathology, and now you're,
I
like
can't
head of a
see you back
field.
there.
Amazing, amazing. I was in English literature, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought I would spend the rest of my life in English literature. And so by the age of 25 or so, I was shifting.
Uh-huh.
So this happens, but you want to be careful about that at the same time, because they do look at these sorts of continuity. So you want to have some kind of narrative about that. So what
Yeah, well, you
happened?
can, you can, I always made it,
Yeah,
but I still use
yeah.
my pathology, my pharmacy, and everything in my teaching of Islamic studies. But
Mm,
I think you
I
can
love
make
that.
uh,
Yeah,
those connections. But today
yeah,
it's even more important
yeah.
because departments are up for grabs, especially in liberal studies.
Yes. Yes.
If those liberal
Yeah.
studies professors can't work STEMs into what
Mm,
they're up for grabs.
they are.
Islamic studies is on its way out. as is Arabic studies, uh,
Mm,
because they're not they're not spoken widely in the population.
mm,
They only fit a very tiny portion of the population.
mm,
Uh,
mm,
so folk who are doing English lit is so
mm.
wide. You can
Yeah.
attach so many things to
Mhm.
it. And I think
Yeah.
that that's important. But you look at like this
Yeah.
other comment we have, it's
Mm,
predatory.
yeah.
Our what did she say? Or he? I'm not sure. One international student brought into
Good.
the program with me was apparently used to check off a box. Absolutely,
Oh
he
my
was in the
God.
wrong program completely for his area of interest and wasted time and money.
That's criminal. It's
And
criminal.
colleges are doing this because they want a
Yeah.
head count. They
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
diversity box checked off.
Right. Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
they want to make
Yeah.
sure they serve the veterans and the
Right.
handicaps and
Yeah.
this and that and the other. And these young people walk away in serious debt.
Yes. Yes. So you want to be sure that you're not doing that, right?
Yeah.
Because what is the return going to be? I mean, look at what your paycheck could be, at the best estimate.
Mm.
Is it going to pay off that kind of debt? So having a job that you can do while doing your PhD is very, very, very advisable. I did not know this.
Yeah.
So I was very I'm not, I, I love my teachers, so I try to be very careful about what I
Uh,
say. But at the same time, I also want to be serving the people who are coming ahead of us, and so they don't make those mistakes. So, for example, as an international student, I was told, oh, great, you have a fellowship. I had some kind of money that I'd
mhm,
cobbled together, and then the university gave me some money for 1 year. Right.
mhm,
And then they said, and when you come here, we can look for money for the following
mhm.
years. Right. Now, I didn't realize that when they said we can look for money meant I'll be looking for money and they can maybe support me and advise me in that regard. I thought, that's it. They're going to help me do this. Second year, and I'm out of money.
Right. And
Third
that's
year,
what is happening.
third year, and I literally had to take time off and go off and work. So my PhD took longer. So I went off and worked at Eastern Illinois University because I'd completely run out of money.
Well, but that sometimes
Yeah.
is what is necessary.
Yes.
And it cuts down on that loan stuff,
Yeah.
which kills students irrespective of what the field is.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
want to go back to majors and this and that and the other.
Mm.
Even after people have tenure track jobs, they can
Mm.
change their field. But
Mm.
if they get a tenure track job and they're fortunate enough to get tenure, because you
Yeah.
can get promoted without getting tenure to an
Yes.
associate without tenure, or
Yeah.
you can and then come up for tenure again after you get some more publications, some more work
Yes.
done. But then it becomes okay. Well, how do I get to full professor? Well, you get
Mm.
there by many more publications.
Mm.
It ceases to be so much on your student evaluation. It still remains on your peer evaluation in and
Mm.
inside and outside of your university.
Mm.
And fortunately for me, I am now a professor emeritus, which is another hurdle to jump.
Yay.
Um,
Oh.
and I didn't expect that it
Mm.
would be another hurdle, but
Mm.
um, there
Huh.
are ranks uh, and you need guidance.
Yes.
The necessity of getting a mentor, staying with that mentor, um,
Yes. Yeah.
choosing the right grad program. I think we talked about that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I always tell my freshmen, if you're undecided, you're in trouble
Mm.
because that's at least another year of money
Yeah.
and effort. Uh,
Yeah.
but there are ways to fashion today that they weren't
Mm.
when I was in college.
Mm.
majors, double majors,
Yeah.
majors
Yeah.
and minors that I
Right.
didn't have the opportunity to do, that
Right.
folks should find not only what they like, but what they're
Yeah.
interested in and what they
Yeah.
find they have some ability with.
So mobility is really useful because
Yeah,
then you're not playing catch up, right?
yeah,
If you're playing catch up, then you're spending a lot of time with that. And also you're hamstrung and you're hampered in comparison to others, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
this is a like think about it. Higher education is like at the top of the triangle, right? So you're very much like always at danger of being weeded out by
especially
competition with others.
women, especially
Yeah,
women.
especially women.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
especially women. And so, and actually, in that regard, I want to say a little thing about how toxic it is for
Oh,
people.
please,
And
please.
so what you said about mentors is really, really important. Find mentors who are sincere, who are good in the field, and
Right.
that will stick with you as friends, so that you're not trying to like make new friends in grad school because it's
Right.
such a competitive space.
It is. It
And
is.
so you find people who you know in your communities, for
Right.
example. One of the really important things for me, like I remember back in, what was it, the 90s, that I spoke to you because I called you up. I'd never met you. But somebody said, hey, you should talk to Professor Amina and she can advise you about the field. And it was so valuable to me to know that
Good.
I could do that. It
Good.
was so amazing to me. And
Yeah.
then there were others also. So I, for example, I would attend the, Association of Muslim Social Scientists, and I
Right.
found just a handful of Muslim women of color, and
Right.
we would talk about our fields. Our fields was slightly different, but
Right.
not too different. And
Right.
so we were able to talk about our field. So attending the conference and then the late night afterwards, hang out
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
gossip and talk about the field and talk about the racism and talk about the Islamophobia you face. And then you actually learn to think of new ways. So conference is really important for that too, to learn to think in the field on your feet, with people who support you, not just with people who
Exactly.
will pull you down. Or like conferences are those places where people like to go and like suck up to new people and like
Right. Right.
find
Right.
these like celebrities. No, that's fine too, but find the people who will stick with you
Yeah.
and who can support you and uplift you.
Yeah.
That's
And
really
challenge
important.
you to be the best
Yeah.
that you can be,
Yes.
whatever it is that you're doing. And that's one thing
Yeah.
we left out in grad school.
Yeah.
Folks should be encouraged to join
Yeah.
associations.
You're right.
No matter
They're
what
not.
the association
Yeah.
of anthropologists, the
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
your area is, uh,
Yeah.
join that association early so you
Yeah.
can see what the
Yeah.
field looks like.
Yeah. Oh, you're so right about that. And I didn't do that because
Mm,
I was always thinking about money.
yeah, yeah,
I was always short of money. I was like,
yeah.
oh, I'm getting an eviction notice. I'm getting an eviction notice now. I'm not going to
Right,
be thinking about how I can join this association or that
exactly,
association.
exactly.
And then at that time, I remember back in, was it 2006? I remember I wrote a very critical message on the Academic Association's listserv saying,
Uh,
is this only for fat cats?
yeah,
Is this organization only for
it
fat cats?
really is.
Why are grad students not enabled to join them at a low price or free or something like
Right,
that? You are serving. We are basically helping you be an organization by our
exactly.
presence,
Right,
right? So you should really like enable that. And you know what? Somebody contacted me and said, "Don't do that. You won't get jobs.
that's
Don't
probably
complain
true.
like that."
That's
Right. So I was like, oh, I guess I'll shut up from now on. And
uh-huh.
then they did, but they did change. They
Mm,
turned it into a
they
sliding
did.
scale
They did.
later. So now more and more organizations are doing that. So if you find that your organization is doing that, join it. It
Yeah,
is very useful.
it is. Well, we
Yeah.
have had a much too fast with all its glitches
Yeah.
talk today, and hopefully we will talk again in the future. Um,
Inshallah.
this has been Critical Talk with Professor Amin Al-Deen and Dr. Shabana Mir. We've had a great time, and I hope you've had one too. Please join us on Muslim Network TV. Make it a check mark on your box on your YouTube or your Facebook. Thank you.